In his day, he was the master of illusion, able to do feats like floating above buildings and evading seemingly insurmountable traps. A magician wasn't Criss Angel's only talent. As he tinkered with the boundaries between the supernatural and everyday life, he became an international sensation. The world was staring, jaws dropping, and hearts racing while he was at the peak of his stardom. However, he subsequently faded from view, removing himself not just from the spotlight but also from all traces of the production. Criss has left the building, along with his primetime antics. What transpired? Was it controversy, exhaustion, or something more sinister lurking behind the scenes? With the lights going down and the applause going out, a much darker tale started to emerge. Unpredictable rumors of a disturbing history, strange charges, and internal problems abound in this one. Just when you thought his underwater escape from a locked tank was the most impressive feat, witness his fall from popularity. This is the reason why Criss Angel is no longer visible. Criss Angel, a memoir of his rise from familial tragic event to mental illness and stardom before he walked on water in Sin City, levitated above the Luxor Hotel, and broke records on national television. There was a young man named Criss. Christopher Nicholas Sarantakos, not the renowned illusionist Criss Angel. A shy and inquisitive young man hailing from a humble Greek-American family residing in East Meadow, New York. Obsession, grief, and the strength of believing in the impossible are the themes that run through his life, not merely spectacular illusions or daring acts. Criss Sarantakos was born on December 19, 1967, to parents John and Dimitri Sarantakos. He was the middle son. John, his father, was a diligent restaurant entrepreneur. By all accounts, he was always there for his children, even though he worked long hours at a donut store. Criss reflected on his youth and spoke about how full it was of love. However, my dad worked tirelessly, rising at 4 in the morning and leaving at 5 or 6 in the afternoon, yet he never missed a moment to spend with his family. Love, tradition, and an indefatigable work ethic permeated their family. However, Criss's mind was constantly wandering to a different place, one where seemingly insurmountable obstacles seemed incredibly close. When Criss was 6 years old, his Aunt Stella demonstrated him a basic card trick, and it changed his life. It wasn't ostentatious, but it opened a door to another world in his imagination. A lifetime fixation was sparked by that one trick. He became completely engrossed in magic from that point forth. With little more than his boundless energy, improvised stage sets, and an expanding sense of amazement, he was already putting on performances for his family when he was 7 years old. In his room, Criss hid from the rest of the kids as they played outdoors. He studied illusion books, watched VHS films of famous magicians, and practiced until his hands hurt. Even though he was never really interested in school, he studied magic diligently. Every deception, every trick, was a hallowed rite in his eyes. He avoided attention in class at East Meadow High and spent most of his time practicing illusions. The hard work, nevertheless, was worthwhile. On his 12-year birthday, he performed at a neighborhood party and made $10. The majority of children would have found that story entertaining. It was an epiphany for Criss. Doing what he liked may be his source of income. In his adolescence, he made the most of every encounter. Celebrations, neighborhood eateries, backyards, nightclubs, or any place else with an audience and a stage. Fans were captivated by his charisma, intensity, and mystique, not to mention his tricks. He was more than just a magician, he was a showman. The East Meadow youngster rose to prominence little by little. Tragic events struck at the very moment when his local stardom was about to take off. He received the devastating news that his father, who had always been his rock, had stomach cancer. John disproved the doctor's predictions and lived for more than 3 years after they'd given him 3 weeks to live. He had Criss at his side the whole time. According to Criss, he had a strong conviction that one's thoughts dictated their physical actions. The intellect had complete control over the body. A turning point in his life came when he watched his father fight that struggle. The day that would alter his life irrevocably then arrived. In 1998, Criss's father passed away while he was holding his hand. According to his recollection, the impact of my father's death in my arms was so great that I knew I had to confront my own concerns immediately after that. He went ahead and did it. On all levels, physical, emotional, and spiritual, he started challenging himself more than before. Because he was terrified of needles, he overcame his fear by dangling from a helicopter using fish hooks. These feats were more than simply entertainment for Criss, they were homages. The anguish of losing his father and the need to live up to his memory drove him to perform every daring act. After that, Criss Angel's performances were more about making the impossible believable than about impressing people. In order to demonstrate that one may turn their suffering into strength via the application of sufficient emotion and determination. In Mind Freak's Secret Revelations, he writes a chapter honoring his father and describes him as the rock upon which their family rested. It's obvious that Crispy's origins in profound love and even more profound grief gave rise to every illusion, escape, every moment of display. But the rock star persona, complete with black eyeliner, motorcycles, and ostentatious pyrotechnics, was really just that dogged little kid honing his skills in his home bedroom. To him, working was a form of treatment. He once claimed that seeing individuals have the courage to face their own anxieties after watching him perform these performances was one of the most rewarding aspects of his work as an artist. The true enchantment he presented was that a new beginning, bravery, and optimism. There is more to Criss Angel's story than the ascent of a magician. It chronicles the growth of a son who rose above adversity, who overcame tragedy to create a profession that went against all odds. His life demonstrates that smoke machines and props cannot create genuine magic. Belief is the source. Have faith in yourself, have faith in your dreams, and know that there is a way out of any gloomy situation. Because fooling others into thinking something is easy is, at times, the biggest deception of all. As Criss Angel climbs the magical mountain, he becomes a legend in the process. Criss, like many artists whose work is motivated by a deep sense of purpose, battled the hardships of constant rejection, limited resources, and the monotony of playing in obscure, underappreciated locations. To top it all off, he had to work numerous jobs to get by. He had no lexicon for giving up. Criss continued forward with dogged persistence, driven by an unwavering faith in his own talents and an intense desire to transform the magical world. In retrospect, he found the early days amusing, but he later admitted that his overnight success actually took 15 years to achieve. My mom's Honda was my only means of transportation back when I was broke. That introspective thought captures the spirit of tenacity that was the bedrock of his achievement. Criss's interest in magic began at a young age. Magic instantly captivated me. I couldn't think of anything else. And that was my sole intention. So, he reflected, it all began when he was just little. What started as a small interest blossomed into a full-fledged passion and profession. Although Criss found inspiration in the feats of great magicians like Harry Houdini, he never intended to just perform like them. For the benefit of future generations, he sought to rethink and redefine magic. I avoided magicians when I was a kid because I didn't want to adopt their way of thinking. I wanted to develop my own style, he says. Because he wanted to shake things up, he created a performance style that relied equally on storytelling and illusions as it did on spectacle. Criss stood out due to his daring combination of rock music with magic, captivating storyline, and real danger factors. The traditional magic show format didn't satisfy him. His goal was to make his shows seem like exciting concerts or stage spectacles. He stood out from the throng thanks to his creative approach, which kept viewers captivated. Criss was multi-talented, he was also an accomplished musician. He started the band Angel Dust in 1995, and they played intense heavy metal with a touch of mystical illusion. His exceptional talent for fusing music and magic was on full display in their 1998 first album, Musical Conjurings from the World of Illusions. According to his previous explanation, music and magic were inseparable for him. By combining his two loves, he was able to stand out and win over fans looking for an unconventional performer. A turning point came for Criss in his early 20s. He relocated to America's entertainment capital, New York City. There were more doors opening for him and a bigger platform to launch his career in the city's thriving art scene. He continued to play non-stop at nightclubs, theaters, and private parties, and his career took off. Criss amazed audiences in the mid-1990s by appearing as part of the World of Illusion conference at the world-famous Madison Square Garden, where he could pull off as many as 60 shows in a single day. His extraordinary endurance and steadfast commitment to perfecting his art were on full display in this rigorous program. Criss' family ties kept him grounded despite the fast pace and growing attention. His mother, Demetra, was always there to cheer him on and give him words of wisdom. He frequently had her sitting in the front row, where she would cheer him on and even lend a hand with the complicated business side of his growing career. According to Criss, his mom was present for every performance, no matter how big or small. He found emotional stability and inspiration through the ups and downs of his trip because to this tight-knit familial foundation. In the end, Criss's story is about perseverance and being innovative, supporting one another through thick and thin. Here is the story of a visionary who broke new ground by rewriting magic's rules rather than following the herd. His formative years were defined by an indefatigable will to succeed, an abundance of risk-taking innovation, and an obsession with finding fresh ways to engage with people. Criss, whose career took off, became an international superstar who elevated contemporary magic to a spectacular art form by fusing illusion with the kinetic energy and dramatic flair of rock stars. But it started with a little lad in Hempstead who was captivated by a basic card trick and motivated by years of hard work, sacrifice, and an unwavering dream. Success does not usually arrive suddenly, as his story shows us. Integral to its foundation are the qualities of passion, tenacity, and daring to stand out. As Criss Angel's meteoric climb from struggling singer to global phenomenon attests, anything is possible when talent meets determination. When Criss Angel's Mind Freak debuted on July 20, 2005, it wasn't like any other magic act. It rethought the concept of illusions in danger. The entire illusions industry was rocked by this spectacular performance, which rethought the possibilities of magic on television. Criss Angel's goal was more than simply to astound spectators. He planned to do crazy things to shock them. Spectacular illusions, and the kind of electric energy that makes watching a rock performance feel like a thrill ride. Mind Freak was immediately shocking to viewers because it was completely out of the ordinary. Massive large-scale stunts frequently put Criss in mortal peril, while street magic and close-up sleight of hand were also included. This went beyond basic card tricks and predicting the future. Extreme daredevil Criss Angel dangled from helicopters by his flesh-piercing hooks, gliding effortlessly between the Las Vegas towers and walking on water. The performance was defined by the nail-biting suspense that accompanied these daring accomplishments. But how did it start? It took time for Criss Angel to become famous. He was well known in the magic world for his inventive performances and dogged persistence by the turn of the millennium. Classic magic, rock music influences, drama, and real danger were all boldly combined in his performance. His unique blend of styles set him apart from more typical magicians. The A&E network sought his one-of-a-kind style and offered him a platform to share his ideas with more people. There were 15 episodes in the first season of Mind Freak, and they were all full of references that pushed people's limits of belief. The now famous body suspension stunt was a memorable part. Criss did, in fact, dangle from a helicopter by use of hooks that were inserted into his flesh. It's the type of risky move that elicits mixed feelings: cringe and applause. The seeming defiance of gravity in levitating between two buildings was another remarkable feat. Because of these incidents, Mind Freak gained a devoted fan following and a lot of attention, and it became an instant hit. Criss Angel maintained his frenetic pace throughout the series. To the contrary, he increased the tempo. More complex and perilous exploits appeared in subsequent seasons. Just picture yourself floating on air, slipping from a cement block underwater, or being crushed by a steamroller as you lay on shattered glass. Criss solidified his position as one of the most fearless magicians of all time with each dangerous feat that he performed, which captivated audiences and left an impression of fear in their hearts. However, shocking people wasn't the only consideration. Thanks to its innovative ideas and top-notch production values, Mind Freak received rave reviews. Every episode was enjoyable thanks to Criss's compelling personality, which is equal parts rock star magician and daring adventurer. More than that, the show moved people. A large number of aspiring magicians look forward to Criss Angel as someone who brought a more contemporary and experimental style of magic to the masses. Expenses were inevitable given the degree of risk involved. The years were tough on Criss's body. He had minor injuries like scratches and bruises as well as more serious ones that required medical treatment. He clearly wasn't oblivious to the mental and physical toll that the pressure to always surpass himself and push boundaries took on him. Criss had to deal with the physical challenges as well as the criticism he received from others in the magic community. Some more conventional magicians felt that his showmanship took away from the magic itself, claiming he was more concerned with shock value than actual skill. However, Criss remained unwavering. To him, breaking molds and taking chances were essential to the evolution of magic. Reimagining the possibilities of magic and making it accessible to more people was his life's work. Everyone seems to agree that he was successful. In its 6 seasons and 96 episodes, Mind Freak won a slew of prizes and captivated millions of viewers. A groundbreaking show, it demonstrated that magic could still be modern, interesting, and entertaining. Spectators saw more than a television program. An adventure into the unknown led by a magician who playfully flirted with peril was what it was all about. Criss Angel's Mind Freak goes beyond a mere compilation of illusions and stunts. A tale of imagination, drive, and breaking barriers. It's all about bringing the kinetic energy of rock and roll to an old art form. A live performance and the intensity of reality television. Magic is about more than simply tricks, as this serves as a reminder. It's about making people ponder, pushing their beliefs to the limit, and occasionally risking everything to achieve an incredible feat. Remember that magic is more than just rabbits and card tricks the next time you consider it. Envision yourself dangling from a helicopter by your skin. Imagine floating effortlessly between structures. Imagine a magician who was not scared to risk it all to astound the world, and a show that dared to revolutionize the game. Criss Angel's Mind Freak ended in 2010 after 6 shocking seasons that revolutionized street magic and elevated illusions to the status of primetime entertainment. There was no cancellation. The network did not experience any significant consequences. It was Criss himself who made the call. He had experienced living precariously for so long, whether it was in a straitjacket, drowned in water, or buried alive, that he realized it was time to take a break. He had to shut one chapter to open another due to the demanding schedule, the continual mental and physical stress, and the need to creatively progress. What followed was an incredibly ambitious chapter. The stage, and not just any stage, but the glittering lights of Las Vegas were Criss's target. Believe, his latest live endeavor, premiered at the world-famous Luxor Hotel and Casino in collaboration with Cirque du Soleil. A daring concept. Combine Cirque du Soleil's famous acrobatics and dramatic narrative with Criss Angel's high-octane, mind-bending illusions. It seemed like a perfect fit for the entertainment industry on paper. Although the premiere of Believe took place in 2008, the reception was everything from enchanted. Not everyone was kind. Many in the crowd seemed bewildered. Despite its grandiosity and effort, the show failed to resonate with Criss in the manner he had anticipated. However, Criss Angel isn't one to give up easily. Keeping his Vegas dream alive was his top priority. But he pulled up his sleeves, assumed entire creative control, and rethought the production from the ground up. Reborn in 2013 as Mind Freak Live, Believe captivated audiences like never before. Mind Freak Live was a huge success because it featured all of Criss's famous illusions as well as brand new, jaw-dropping stage antics. The audience would gasp, applaud, and wonder how Criss managed to pull it off night after night while he packed the house. With Criss' magnetic personality and the support of a crew that believed in his vision, the performance went beyond being a mere presentation and became a full-blown spectacle. Behind the scenes, Criss Angel's life was starting to fall apart in the most tragic way possible, even as his profession was shining brighter than ever under the Vegas lights. No parent is ever ready to hear the terrible news that Criss did in 2015. 20 months ago, his son Johnny Christopher received the devastating news that he had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, a type of cancer known for its rapid progression and aggressiveness. Out of nowhere, the blazing lights, the thunderous acclaim, and all the honors melted away. His focus changed in an instant. Now came the most horrifying test of the magician's life, after he had escaped from sealed coffins and levitated over the Luxor. Criss left everything behind as he watched his child fight a fatal illness. In order to be with Johnny, he canceled all of his scheduled concerts, appearances, and engagements. He sat through his son's chemotherapy treatments day after day, holding his hand. and done all in his power to protect Johnny from harm while bearing an indescribable weight himself. Fear, tiredness, and emotional upheaval characterized this period as the darkest and most soul-crushing of his life, as he recounted it in interviews. The financial and emotional burden of his son's condition was too much for him to bear, even if he was financially successful. But Criss, being Criss, found a way to channel his pain into something positive. He didn't hide from the world, instead, he made his voice heard loud and clear in his fight against childhood cancer. He couldn't keep quiet after learning how severely underfunded and ignored kid cancer research was. To aid other families going through the same ordeal and to generate money for innovative research, Criss established the Help Foundation, an abbreviation for Heal Every Life Possible. Criss wasn't content to only write checks, he poured his soul into planning massive fundraising events like the Help for Hope Telethon, which united famous magicians, artists, and fans in a common cause. In order to prevent loss of life. By sharing Johnny's experience and shedding awareness on the difficult reality endured by countless of families, he gave a voice to those who did not have one and included moving pieces into his performances. Viewers witnessed Criss in a new light. Has he not evolved into a showman, yes? As well as being an enthusiastic supporter and a doting parent. The man who had previously vanished into thin air now made sure that the plight of sick children around the world was acknowledged. Criss Angel demonstrated on this voyage that he wasn't the best at avoiding death or overcoming gravity. It was transforming indescribable suffering into empathy and direction. He made a difference, fought for what he believed in, and lifted others up via his renown. Although Mindfreak concluded in 2010, the legacy of Criss Angel's advocacy and the show itself continue on, both in Vegas and beyond. In addition to rebranding himself as a magician, he became an icon of strength and unfaltering love. The most magical moments, it turns out, don't occur during the performance, but rather when the cameras roll and the real battle starts. Criss Angel's unbreakable spirit. Despite the common belief that magic is primarily an illusion, for Criss Angel, magic took on a deeper meaning. In doing so, it served as both protection and therapy, allowing him to cope with the unfathomable. Criss, in contrast to other magicians, was turning his sorrow into mesmerizing performances, rather than making coins vanish or rabbits appear out of hats. Every heart-pounding stunt and gasping spectator was a parent fighting through his grief. An individual transforming adversity into inspiration. A turning point came when Criss's little son, Johnny Christopher, was told he had leukemia. The bright lights of chemotherapy and hospital rooms abruptly clashed with the carefree glare of the stage. Criss, however, did not shrink from the spotlight but rather intensified his efforts. His performance came to a halt. He changed. He gave his entire presentation a new life by reimagining it with greater passion, intensity, and edge. Planet Hollywood's revised Mental Freak wasn't merely an illusion, it reflected his internal struggle. It was full with meaning in life, and it throbbed with a new energy. Criss persisted in making art despite the overwhelming burden of his son's sickness. He did more than remain committed, he took his profession to new heights. To portray his real, lived experience, he challenged himself to create new illusions that weren't merely optical illusions. Nobody missed that kind of tenacity. The fans could feel it. To peers, it was sacred. Criss had transcended the stage of a mere applause-seeking performance. Still, he held out hope. He was rather forthright about how Johnny's sickness had changed him. He went on to say that his son's bravery in the face of danger had given him the strength he never knew he possessed. Each show evolved into something more than a mere kind of amusement. It turned into a release. Viewers were treated to more than just a magic show. Despite living in a completely altered environment, they were seeing a guy use magic as a means of healing, coping, and maintaining some kind of normalcy. Love washed over them. During Criss's lowest points, people from all around the globe gave him messages of comfort, donated to the fight against pediatric cancer, and offered words of encouragement. His family were saved by the overwhelming support they received. Criss frequently said that the support of that group was what kept him going and inspired him to keep maintain his performance and continue to advocate for his son. After that, some encouraging news emerged. Johnny started to feel better. During remission periods, I felt a twinge of relief and briefly experienced delight. However, there is still a long way to go. Being an outspoken supporter of pediatric cancer research, Criss maintains vigilance beyond his role as a father. His unending stream of information serves as an inspiration to families facing comparable challenges. He transcended the role of mere theatrical performer. Awareness and change were aided by it. While Criss's life story is touching, we must not lose sight of the aura of mystery that surrounded him. Not wanting to be just another magician was Criss Angel's goal from the start. A combination of rock star swagger and gothic mystique formed his persona, which he used to build a brand. Turning magic into theater, Criss wore all black, heavy eyeliner outlined his eyes, and exuded a brooding intensity. He transported his audience to a parallel universe through his illusions. It is to be expected that rumors started circulating following such outlandish and bizarre performances. Had Criss genuinely been a magician all along, but was he experimenting with something more sinister? Both believers and doubters began to murmur about satanic pacts, otherworldly abilities, and the occult. Some people took his stylized logo as a hint to the Antichrist, which caused a stir online. Additionally, Criss made no effort to downplay the rumors. He actively sought out the enigma. His performances were filled with eerie and gothic imagery, which fueled the fire and kept the audience on the edge of their seats. Despite all the pretense, Criss never shied away from making one thing very apparent. Everything is a mirage. Every mind-bending trick and jaw-dropping stunt is the result of endless practice, great engineering, and pure dedication, he has stressed in interviews. He's not calling upon demons, rather, he's exerting more effort than anyone else present. The villain, a minor character in the play. The skill, though there is no exaggeration. That, perhaps, is the ultimate form of enchantment. Capacity to move and enthrall. And to inspire others to have faith in an exceptional cause. To put it simply, Criss Angel is more than simply a man doing magic feats. He is a parent who channeled his son's suffering into strength, an artist who made legend out of tragedy, and a performer who muddied the waters between fact and imagination. Even in the depths of despair, he demonstrates that wonder may be found. So, whether you attribute his strength to innate talent or some other unexplained factor, one thing is certain: he is powerful. Unforgettable is Criss Angel. For as long as he has air in his body, he will continue to perform, not just for the admirers but also for his loved ones. If you found this in-depth look into the life of Criss Angel, a magician and survivor, to be interesting, please subscribe and give us a bell so we can bring you more stories like this in the future. Give Criss Angel a thumbs up if his story has inspired you, and tell us about your favorite Criss Angel moment in the comments section. We appreciate you taking the time to watch, and we will be back soon with more exciting stories.